And not my normal thing. Those of you who joined us last week will have seen me chat with Kasia and Craig and Amanda and Chelsea. This week we have Lauren, Gustavo, and Austin, or Boo, as he's more commonly known. So again, we're just going to talk a little bit of Roundup and Harvest and the people you don't know, just to talk about who we are and what we're doing here and our thoughts on life at Talbot's Creek. Been a really busy week, a busy couple of days. Brought in I don't know how many times over the last couple of days, but it's been frantic with Grenache, Counoise, Morved. What else have we seen? Tanat. And Roussan. So White Press has been running the red destemming and processing for fermentation. We've been pressing reds and getting them into barrel to finish up fermentations, and both with Talbot's Creek Estate fruit and also with Patalan de Talbos from vineyards off the property, which that's when it gets busy. We're bringing pretty large amounts of fruit from various vineyards around, mostly on the west side of Paso this time. A lot of Grenache from the Whale Rock vineyard, and then today we've got a lot of Morvedre from the Hollyhock vineyard, which will go to Patalan Red, both of those things. So busy. The winery at last is full. It's been kind of a slow year up to now, but today was the first day that this morning Craig and Chelsea and I were trying to figure out where we were going to put all the food this morning. A lot of flies buzzing around us, so we're not beekeeper food here, though. Lauren's a bit of a beekeeper as it happens this week. But, I think, I want this for you to meet the team, so let's let Boo introduce himself a little bit. Austin has been here his entire life, but has been working for Talbot's Creek for a couple of years, so take it away, Boo. Why don't you talk a little bit about what it is you do and think and like and don't like?
Harvest. Yeah, my role is really the barrel boy. So I get barrels ready for red presses and white presses and barreling down and all that.
So yeah, what does that involve? What is getting barrels? I mean, what does that mean for people out there that have never gotten a barrel ready? What is the process of which barrels you choose and how you prep them to receive fresh wines and juices?
So we're lucky enough to have another storage room down below now where we store our barrels. So I'll go down there and figure out the gallonage, how much we need, pick out the barrels with Craig and Chelsea and my dad, figure out what cooperage we want to use, what sizes. I'll bring them up here and we'll steam them and then rinse them out, get them all cooled down, and then line them up in the cellar, either by the press or outside, and get them all filled up so they can finish their primary and go through mallet down below. So I'll bring them back down there, and then we have a heated room, 65 degrees, to allow it to finish its job of barrel.
And as far as the process of selecting barrels for a given lot, what is that? I mean, why would you pick one barrel for one thing and not another? Or what is that conversation with Craig in the morning or the evening before, probably?
So far we've been pressing mostly Syrah because that comes in first, so it's ready to go to barrel first. We put all of our Syrah into 60-gallon, 228-liter barrels because it has more contact with oxygen. And then now we're starting to get into Grenaches and other varietals. Grenaches we tend to put in Pungens, which is 132-gallon barrels, and Demis, which are 158-gallon barrels. And a question there. Yes, we use all neutral barrels pretty much. Our Syrah lots, we have some that have some newer barrels, but mostly everything is neutral. And we actually, by way of Gustavo, we do a biodynamic Syrah now, which we pick on fruit days, correct?
Sure.
And yeah, only pick on fruit days and then barrel down on fruit days. So that goes into a biodynamic barrel, which is harvested and farmed biodynamically, just like our grapes here. But yeah, and then we're just starting to get into Tanat as well, and that's the only other one that goes into really smaller barrels, like Syrah, 60 gallons. Besides that, everything is in larger format.
And at Demi, when we get into that, it steps up to a thicker stave. The wood of the actual makeup of the barrel is a lot thicker, so there's a lot less oxygen transfer in the demi. They're heavy and they're big, a little cumbersome, but they work. You're going to hear noise in the background. We're still really busy in the cellar. They're processing that more better we talked about, so we can't stop the entire process for Facebook Live, unfortunately. So what are you doing the rest of the year when you're not selecting barrels here at Talbot's Creek?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. I've often wondered what it is you're doing.
So this is the first year, I think in February, that I was moved out into the vineyard full time. So I got the enjoyable process of figuring out our entire irrigation system. So yeah, I spent every day in the vines, turning on the water, fixing either drip line or underground PVC pipe. And we've got a cool thing called a sulfur burner, which is pretty scientific, but it drops the pH of the water pretty much, so it allows nutrients and everything for the grapevines to easily uptake that stuff. It also keeps the lines clear, but yeah, so water is my world in the vineyard.
I know that someone's going to ask this question, as I thought Talbot's Creek was mostly dry farm. What's the answer to that question?
The answer is that's not true. We have a lot. I think we have about 25 to 30% of our vineyard is dry farm, and the rest is on mostly 8x3 trellis. We don't irrigate as much as a lot of people, but we do irrigate when we need to.
We have a limited capacity to irrigate. We have really one main well that we pull out of, and it goes direct to the vineyard with the sulfur burner in line. And that, I mean, you're right, with 25-30%, that changed dramatically this year. So we just planted 25 acre more dry farm. So I was doing the math for cover crop, and we are at about 50 acres of dry farm vineyard now, which is
Right.
impressive. It's a lot. So supplemental irrigation does go, and it's a question I get asked all the time because a lot of the information is that we dry farm, we irrigate to the very minimum, but like these limestone rocky hills like the one behind us here, then a tight spacing on an 8x3 spacing, it needs some supplemental irrigation, particularly in years like this where it just didn't rain.
And certain varietals like more water than others. Like we tend to water Roussan and Morvet more than everything else because they tend to shut down earlier and they just have a hard time ripening.
Like to have wet feet, as they say.
Yeah, keeping the canopy up.
All right, let's move on to Gustavo, the Chilean. So Gustavo's been here for, I don't know, 16 years, something like that?
Over 14.
Over 14?
Yeah.
So starting in the tasting room and then slowly moving his way into cellar and ultimately into biodynamics. He's now the official biodynamist of Talbot's Creek. You got to say, Gustavo, speak loud.
Well, yeah, so
Camera.
I got involved in the biodynamic program in the early days, kind of as just watching as a curiosity with our friend and the person who helped us to establish the program in the beginning, Philippe. So watching Philippe and helping through the years, at the end, I became the person, the biodynamicist. So I run the program at Tablas, keep the biodynamic, the spraying according to the calendar. We make all the preparation, all the preps here on site, which is very important. We're about to start doing that again later this month, beginning of November. I'm kind of focusing again on that biodynamic. We start with our winter spraying, which is the cow manure, the cow horn, number 500 during the winter. If we have rain before December, we probably start in December. But we need to hope so, really. We need to wait until we have some moisture in the ground to do that. We typically do three sprays during the season in the months of typically in the winter months, maybe March as the latest.
Do you feel like you've seen the effects of the biodynamics since we came here? We've grown. We were certified in 2016, but we've really intensified that program a lot since Gustavo took over full time, being the guy that makes sure that we make the preps correctly and we apply it over time. And I feel like the impact of the biodynamics is apparent.
But it's always, get a question myself all the time. And, I think, but what all the things that we do at Tablas, they complement each other so well. I think, everything that we do benefits and help each of these programs. So the biodynamics is one of them. All the work in the vineyard, all the work that is done through the years, I think that's all adds to the success of this vineyard, really. Really. As we taste fruit, as we harvest and we go through fermentations, we just love what is happening here. I always see that. I see that I'm very involved with the fermentation part of that management and things. So we see those fermentations going through, and always have a big fruit. It just goes through, and it's nice. It smells good, and it has a lot of. I think it's a good nutrient for base fermentation.
I think it's a question I get asked a lot. That's why I asked you, so I asked someone else. But I think, as you rightly say, it's like all of the stuff we do here. It's hard to say one thing makes a noticeable difference. I believe the whole program of the organics and the biodynamics, and certainly the animal element of the program in the last decade has been really important. And it's really hard to put your finger on one thing being the reason, but without question, I'd say any of the wines over the last decade from what we've been doing. And we improve what we do in the winery year by year too. We're always having more experience. Sure.
I think the effect can be seen in these more challenging years also, especially during the drought. I think the vineyard is able to do better.
I think one of the biggest influences Biodynamics has is passion. There's no farm that's farming biodynamically that's not super into what they're doing. But it kind of presents that.
To take on that method, you've got to be.
It's a lot of work.
You've got to be dedicated.
Yeah,
You have to believe in the process.
But it's important to me to have a guy like Gustavo, because without Gustavo, I'm not going to be making those preps. So exactly, to have my own, and it's something that you've got to give full attention to. My bandwidth isn't that big for sure. Very big at all, in fact. And so Lauren, intern for the year and bee collector. So just what brings you here and how much are you enjoying it? Lots.
Yes. Neil paid me before this, okay?
Only one answer.
One, to clarify the beekeeper reference, I've gotten stung a total of today, as of like 15 minutes ago, number 6. Yeah,
Number
this,
6.
This one. So I was icing it just a minute ago. Number 6 times, and then just like the mutt.
Well, that's 5 times.
Yeah,
There it is, being stung
Displaying
right
a
there.
photo. That was just a few minutes ago.
So more of a bee collector than keeper, really.
Yeah. But yeah, as Neil said, I am an intern. And that's my hand also really swollen from yesterday's sting. It's pretty gross looking. You don't have to put it up there. But yeah, so as Neil said, I am a harvest intern. And I actually didn't really know that harvest was such a thing within the wine industry until I kind of got this internship. So I feel really fortunate that I somehow ended up here, out of all places. But I went to school within the area, and I happened to graduate almost 2 years ago now. And it'll be 2 years coming in next year. But I went and took a job, realized that's not for me, and I had majored in agriculture business. And so I have had this kind of growing interest in regenerative organics and biodynamics, as we just talked about, and agriculture in general. And so that's kind of, I think, what the combination of all those three landed me here at Tablas. I was like, I want to try and pursue this, and I want to get some exposure to it. And so how do I do that? And Tablas just came up, and I wasn't like seeking out exactly a winery, but so happy that I did, because I've learned so much. I don't really know anything, or I didn't know much coming into it, and I think the team here has taken me in so well. I think the first like 2 weeks here, I exploded wine everywhere, all over the place, and I was like, oh, probably are pretty regretful right now. But it was, everyone took it as a joke because I guess that happens like pretty frequently. And so yeah, I've had little mishaps like that happen quite a few times, but it's been a great learning process nonetheless. And I really like here, one, the people. I think who just touched on it takes passion to create a place such as this winery and the work we do. And I think if you would come out here and meet with everyone and see it functioning, you would see that passion on a very day-to-day basis. And it's really motivating to kind of come back to every day, especially in those long hours, longer days that you hear of in the harvest season. You know, it would be so much harder to get through every day if it wasn't with people that were kind of there for the same reasons. And two, I just love how much learning I've been allowed to be exposed to. Like I said, I didn't really have much knowledge to the wine industry specifically, especially like the cellar experience. And I think I've been really given lots of exposure. And if I ever want to try something out or something new, if it wasn't already an opportunity for me, I think if I were to ask, it would very much be presented to me, and I would be allowed to do so. So I think those two. So you're going to say something?
Yeah, no, I think it's a rewarding thing about, for me anyway, of each year we have interns come in, and you know, sometimes they're people who have done a number of harvests, but often they're not. They're people who are coming in with no real knowledge of what's going on. And it's kind of fun to sit back and watch people figure out what they enjoy and don't enjoy, and make, you know, to make small mistakes is natural. Everybody does it. You can tell people 1,000 times not to do that. They're going to do it anyway. It's just, you do it once, and nothing's catastrophic. You know, we certainly wouldn't allow that. But watching people get a grasp of it, start to understand it, and then go from that to getting a bit more passionate about it, starting to really feel the smells of fermentations, and starting, then you see, start talking, and you're going to say, hey, that smells really good, and that doesn't smell great, hey, can you go look at that? And that growth is a really fun thing to watch, because it's where, certainly for me, that's where it started for me. I only intended to do one harvest. The smells, the community, and the feel of harvest in particular is a very different time of year. It's an exciting time of year. We love that. We have the great lunches every day when we all sit down. At first, those are a bit weird and disjointed maybe, but then everyone starts talking about the wines, and talking about the day, and then how it relates to other tastes. A lot of your opinion on people's wines. It's cool. But watching people evolve into that is one of the pleasures of harvest for me, for sure.
I think it's one of the coolest things about the industry is harvest internships. You could go from this, and then 3 months from now, you could go to the Southern Hemisphere and do it again, and just go back and forth. My best life experiences are doing internships.
Yeah, so, I mean, all over the world, right? I mean, you see, both of you two. I mean, New Zealand and France and Australia, and I don't know where you've been. France a lot. France has been your main. I've done one. You know, when I was in the business early, it wasn't quite such a thing. You know, people weren't doing it like they are now. Now the young guys go back and forth, north and southern hemisphere. You can just do harvest
for years.
Because a lot of people just do that for years.
They won't break out of it. You know, right. For like 10, 15 years, just keep
there's one local guy, Bill Schaefer, who's older than me, and he still doing it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And his comment is, the rest of the year in a winery just seems like work.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work. You're really busy.
But it's true that you come and do one harvest, you think, that's it, just gonna try and see how it is, and then you get hooked, and then you do a second, and then a third, and then suddenly 10 years pass, and 15, and like Neil, like 30 now, so
a lot.
30.
This is number 30. This is my 30th
year.
harvest. That's right. Someone pointed that out to me earlier.
Yeah,
it's a big thing.
I think it can be so much embodied in like one fermenter when you're punching down. When you first start pushing down, you've never dealt with it before, right? Pushing down grapes, it's tough. This is a class thing. It's not that easy. And then as it slowly starts, and the smells, like weird smells begin, and then it'll come, and then 4 or 5 days later, it's exploding in beautiful purple, pink, whatever it is, foam, and the smells are intense.
Yeah.
And then watching it slow, I think just within one ferment, you see what a fascinating thing it is that we do.
And it's so cool working here because we work with so many different varietals that each varietal has like its characteristic smells. And so each varietal smells so different. That's a good experience.
I would
Right.
so agree with that. I think one of the first few weeks I was in here, one of the tanks, the lights was already going off.
Yeah.
Gosh, like, what is that smell? And then I went and tasted it, and I kind of, for one of the first times, I think it was Jenny, was like, oh, you can tell by like these notes are what I taste. I was like, oh, I actually pick up on that, and I see that. And kind of to what you were saying, where when you're doing punch downs and you're like, oh, these are just grapes. I think constantly for me, like daily, I have these kind of revelations of, oh my gosh, like, look at the work we're doing. This is so cool because, you're doing a punch down, but within like the past 4 days, you've seen it transition to this completely almost new product. And it's totally changed. And it's a really, really cool process to be at such kind of the front.
I was going to say, to me, fermentation is the most amazing thing that you can
Magical thing.
It's just phenomenal, really fantastic.
And one of the great moments of the year, and we all felt it really powerfully this year, was when you walk in that door on a Monday morning,
First one.
and that Viognier tank is taken off.
Yeah.
And I walked in this year, and we saw those biodynamic peaches were sitting on the counter. And I looked at, I was walking by, and I was like, oh, those smelling strong. And I was like, wait a minute. And it was not the peaches, it was the Viognier tank.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Going off in such an incredible smell.
Yeah. You could smell it from the beginning of the party.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful.
That never ever gets old.
No.
And then, Lauren
So
hasn't
exciting.
witnessed this yet, but we are now approaching a moment. In fact, earlier, and we tasted the first wine out of barrel from this vintage, that was now flowing clear and starting to show itself. And that's the first pick of the year, and everybody goes and helps pick. And now it's in a barrel, and you start to taste it, and you start to see the differences flavor-wise, profiles, clonally are different. I think, again, for Lauren was punching down Pinot A and Pinot V and everything, they look the same to me. And they don't smell that different in the fermenter particularly. But now that differential is starting to show.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting, like the next couple of weeks when we start tasting Syrahs.
Syrahs,
Yeah.
Some of the whites will be flowing clear. It's, again, an incredible
The
process.
transformation is amazing. It is how the process that they go through and the evolution of each of these wines. Each one of them has their own personality, and you can taste that. You can smell that, taste that.
I think the biodynamic thing is a fun one. We've been doing, what is it, fourth year or third year? Third year where we harvested on the biodynamic day, and we tried to at least, and into the biodynamic, no sulfur, treating it very, very carefully and not using a pump as little as possible. So when we drain the tank, we don't use a pump like we do on most of our wines, into the biodynamic barrels with gravity, and just making wine in a not massively different style, but using slightly different techniques. And there to watch those wines, and we've had a couple with lunch with the Never Saw Sulfur from 3 years ago, and tasting really, really good. So, and it's something that will build to other things we can do within the winemaking process. Maybe we can start reducing certain things and changing a lot of what we do. It's like the last bit.
I didn't have to do it.
We had a question there from Randy Coleman.
Randy Coleman, happy
Yes.
birthday, Randy Coleman,
Oh, happy birthday and Father's Day.
and Daughter's Day.
Off-topic question: Terry Noir and/or Claret this year? Yes, we did. We've already picked Claret. It's fermenting in barrel right now. Terry Noir should come in Monday or Tuesday next week.
Terry Noir's
There it is, the sample of it in the lab, waiting to be ran for sugars and pH. And
it's been lagging a little behind this year, but it's starting to taste really good in the vineyard. I was yesterday tasting it. It's really such a quirky grape.
it's such a freak
It's spicy
in a good way.
and pale in color, but structured and so different than everything else.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm probably his biggest fan of the cellar. Maybe I think it's super cool. I mean, it's never going to be the next Chardonnay or Cabernet, that's for sure. But it's super cool and quirky grape. I'm I'm really inspired by it. And this year we have a decent amount of. In fact, the last time we did this, we had just picked the muscadin. And
Yep.
now it's starting to smell really good.
It
Too,
smells
right?
really, really good. Yeah, that's probably my most exciting varietal, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm most excited for some reason. Yeah.
Strange.
It's a bit strange. So it's so
Related-
new and it's light and it's
Related
just-
to Mongoose, you said? Or?
There's not a lot of history on it. There is a blog that Jason did on Muscardin a couple of years ago, I think, and there's not a lot of history or literature about it, but they do say that it is almost identical to Mongoose Noir, which is a light-skinned red grape from the Savoie region, like the foothills of the Alps. So it's very similar to that. But this year, I think we picked like 400 pounds of it. Pretty great, a little bigger than last year.
And that's more than anyone else in America.
And yeah, we fermented it in a pungeon took its head off, and the head came off somehow, and we put it in there, and it's fermenting. It's probably ready to be pressed next week.
Yeah, getting close.
Yeah.
I think
Pretty
pretty much
pretty-
double or triple production from last year.
Yeah, we tripled it. Yeah,
So we'll have like 20 gallons this year.
yeah. We should have
Maybe 30.
15 cases, I think. We're talking about.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
A
a big range.
bottleable amount.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exclusive, very exclusive.
Does that answer Randy Coleman's question?
Hope so.
Cool.
Any
So-
other questions?
I mean, any last thoughts from you guys before we get back to work?
Yeah, maybe we should just keep talking. Looks like they've got
we
it.
go for another hour. We still only doing nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
No, just looking forward. I mean, we're reaching the end of it fast.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Here at Taulas,
You're right.
it's not much.
I mean, it's been a
to
bit of a
pick.
curious vintage.
Yeah,
We harvested things out of order this year a little bit. I mean, for Talbos for sure, and I mean most. Obviously, for the Loma Drum label, we brought in from the same vineyard. We brought in grape varieties in a different order than every one of them we've ever done before. We brought Cabernet in before Zinfandel and Syrah. We brought Pitbull in before Grenache Blanc. It's been the same here, but that was just so dramatic. And here we brought the cab, our little bit of cab here, it's already in.
Yeah.
Um,
Since all the early varieties got kind of behind,
Yeah.
late, and then the later varieties not going too late, it kind of so they catch up with each other. So last year was a little similar.
Similar, but not quite as dramatic.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre to have Cabernet already in there.
Right.
That's really strange. But all really good quality fruit. I mean, everything we're seeing so far is pretty intense.
We got a question here from Ian Consoli.
Oh yeah.
It's weird, right here, but he says he's asking how much longer will you be picking?
So we picked the last. You can't see it, but up here is what we call Mourvèdre Romantin. We picked the last 8 or 9 tons off that today, and we have one more decent sized block of Mourvèdre. We'll probably pick through next week, and then that'll be the end of it.
So one more week left for me to get my steak count up.
No, the bees will still be around.
Oh.
Yeah. Your best chances are next week. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
You're gonna go to see visit the beehive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You get
Craig
sun
told me
all
to
over.
stick my body.
All right. So I think we'll call it there, and we can get back to work. I hope that was interesting to those of you watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and by which time the grapes will be picked, and we'll be into pressing and tasting barrels, and that'll be a whole new interesting situation and conversation, I'm sure. But thanks to these guys for taking a break from the hard day and drinking a beer. I know they didn't want to sit here and drink beer.
Really
No
tough.
problem.
Really tough.
Yeah, there it is.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for checking in. Cheers.
Yeah.
See you on the next.